Afternoon, this is Globe File on Adami Mogo 93.1 FM Lagos. I'm Ayo Adekeye as headline. President Tinubu orders 5,000 surveillance cameras after just killings. IMF school leader elected president by pro-military parliament. We went to vote on a moves resolution as China opposes authorization of force. The news in detail will begin from home, where President Bola Tinubu has directed the installation of more than 5,000 surveillance cameras across Plateau State in response to recent killings in Jos. The directive was issued during a meeting with political and traditional leaders in the state, coming days after the Palm Sunday attack in Agwarukubu that claimed over 27 lives. Tinubu said the initiative will strengthen security operations by enabling law enforcement agencies swiftly identify and track perpetrators. He asked the Minister of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, to provide details of the plan. While acknowledging the pain of affected families, the President noted that no amount of compensation could replace lost lives, but assured that the government would provide necessary support to victims. Away from Nigeria, Ghana is set to grant visa-free access to all African passport holders, becoming the fifth African nation to implement such a policy. According to reports, the new policy will take effect on May 25th, coinciding with African Day celebrations. The announcement was made during the state visit of Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa and builds upon an earlier initiative by former President Nana Akufo-Addo, who had pledged visa-free travel for Africans during his final State of the Nation address in January 2025. This initiative, however, did not come into effect before the end of his administration. Under the updated framework, Ghana joins Benin Republic, the Gambia, Rwanda and Seychelles as the only African countries providing visa-free entry to all African nations. Away from Africa, Miami's school leaders have won parliamentary votes to become the country's president, formalizing his grip on political power in the war-torn nation 5 years after he ousted an elected government. Onglindwe, the Speaker of Parliament's combined upper and lower house, confirmed that the senior general, Minung Leung, won 429 out of the 584 votes cast by members in the country's pro-military parliament today. The transition from the top general to civilian president follows a lopsided election in December and January that was won in a landslide by an army-backed party and raided by critics and Western governments. Now negotiations between Afghanistan and Pakistan are advancing steadily following reports that the South Asian neighbors were meeting to try to end their worst conflict since the Taliban returned to power in 2021. Reports say China, which shares a western border with both nations, has been trying to mediate between the allies turned foes, holding telephone calls with the foreign ministers and sending a special envoy on visit in March. China's foreign ministry spokesperson Mao Ning told news conference that both Pakistan and Afghanistan attach importance to and welcome China's mediation and are willing to sit down for talks. Although Mao did not say where the talks were being held, the neighbors have previously said they were in the northwestern city of Urumqi. In Asia, South Korean President Lee Jae-yong and French President Emmanuel Macron say they plan to boost defense cooperation and work together to address economic and energy crisis triggered by the war in Iran. Reports say Macron arrived in South Korea yesterday for a 2-day state visit after also visiting Japan and held a summit in Seoul today. In remarks ahead of the summit, Macron weighed in on the US-Israel war in Iran, calling a military operation to liberate the Strait of Hormuz unrealistic, while warning that such a move would take too long and pose serious risks.
There are those who advocate for the idea of liberating the Strait of Hormuz by force through a military operation, a position that has occasionally been expressed by the United States of America. I say occasionally because it has varied. It's never the option we have chosen, and we consider it unrealistic. It's unrealistic because it would take an inordinate amount of time and would expose anyone crossing the strait to coastal threats from the Revolutionary Guards, who possess significant resources as well as ballistic missiles and a host of other risks.
It is the first state visit by French president since 2015, and French officials have said the trip aims to strengthen France's strategic and economic role in the region. Listening to Globe File on Adami Mogo 93.1 FM Lagos. Still to come, you went to vote on Hormuz resolution as China opposes authorization of force.
You can listen to Adami Mogo 93.1 FM from any part of the world. Download the Adami Mogo 931 FM app from Google Play Store and Radio Garden. And follow us on Adami Mogo 93.1 FM on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have eyewitness stories or exclusive to share, contact the Adami Mogo FM newsroom via mail at newsroom@adamimogofm.com. Or you can dial 070-634-03583. You can dial 090-319-69629. Adami Mogo 93.1 FM Lagos, voice of the light.
Thank you for staying with us, and now to the rest of our stories. United States President Donald Trump has said the U.S. has not even started destroying what it left in Iran, which threatened vows to increase the ferocity of attacks on its infrastructure. Nearly 5 weeks after it started with a joint U.S.-Israeli aerial assault, the war in Iran continues to spread chaos across the region and world financial markets, raising the pressure on Trump to find a quick resolution to the conflict. Reports say Trump has stepped up his rhetoric in recent days as negotiations conducted via intermediaries with new leaders in Iran show limited signs of progress. In a post on social media late yesterday, Trump said the U.S. military has not even started destroying what's left in Iran, adding that Iran's leadership knows what has to be done and has to be done fast. In the meantime, the head of the Gulf Cooperation Council has called on the United Nations to act to immediately halt Iranians' attack across the region, condemning the strike as a flagrant violation of international law. Speaking at the UN Security Council yesterday, GCC Secretary General Jassim Al-Budawi asked the Council to take all necessary measures to bring an end to Iran's attack on Gulf countries.
We stand at a crossroads, a real test to the credibility of the international system. Either collective security prevails and is safeguarded, or we leave the world vulnerable to the rule of force. We in the GCC are advocates of stability and partners in responsibility. We extend our hand in peace, yet we will not compromise our security, sovereignty, or regional stability.
It was earlier reported that Iran placed a stronghold on the key shipping lane, threatening fuel supplies and buckling the global economy in retaliation for U.S.-Israeli strikes on the country that triggered month-old Middle East war. And now the United Nations Security Council is to vote on a Bahraini resolution to protect commercial shipping in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Earlier yesterday, Bahrain's Foreign Minister Abdulatif bin Rashid Al Zaini says that Bahrain finalized a draft resolution that would authorize all defensive means necessary to protect commercial shipping, and looked forward to a unified position from the Council.
The Kingdom of Bahrain submitted a draft resolution to your esteemed Council on Iran's unlawful and unjustified attempt to control international navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, placing before your esteemed Council a challenge that requires a decisive response to such actions that are irresponsible and illegitimate actions that threaten the interests of nations and peoples around the world. We are confident that this draft resolution is consistent with international law and with the provisions of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, which guarantees the right of transit passage through straits without obstruction, contrary to what Iran is doing today. We look forward to a unified position from this esteemed Council during the vote that will take place on the draft resolution tomorrow, God willing.
However, in remarks to the Security Council, China's United Nations envoy Fu Cheng opposed authorizing force, arguing that such a move would be legitimizing the unlawful and indiscriminate use of force.
The Council bears the primary responsibility for maintaining international peace and security and should uphold an objective, impartial, and fair position. Under the current circumstances, authorizing member states to use force would amount to legitimizing the unlawful and indiscriminate use of force, which would inevitably lead to further escalation of the situation and lead to serious consequences.
Two diplomats said the meeting of the Council's 15 members and the vote were set for tomorrow morning rather than today, as earlier planned because of the holiday. Elsewhere, Thailand's Prime Minister Anutin Chanvirakul has today slammed oil traders for excessive profiteering, blaming those stockpiling fuel or smuggling it abroad for shortages that have driven price steadily higher. Chanvirakul said authorities have found cases of fuel stockpiling and smuggling for sale in neighboring countries, stressing that the problem had cost the government 50 billion baht. The Prime Minister called the action a major factor behind the nationwide fuel shortages seen in recent weeks, arguing that smuggling and stockpiling amounts to excessive profiteering from rising oil prices during the global energy crisis. Now to sports, where Chelsea announced plans to visit Lagos State for the first time in the club's history as part of their global fan engagement initiative, the famous CFC, later this May. The Premier League side, in a post on social media, confirmed that the Nigerian city will host the penultimate event of the 2025-26 program, with the visit organized in partnership with M Sports, the club's official betting partners in Africa. Former Chelsea and Super Eagles forward Victor Moses is set to headline the event, where he will interact with fans across a series of activities designed to celebrate the club's global following. To end Globe File, here's a recap of the major stories. I told you President Bola Tinubu directed installation of more than 5,000 surveillance cameras across Plateau State in response to recent attacks in the state. Also in the news, Myanmar coup leader has won the parliamentary votes to become the country's president, formalizing his group on political power. Finally, it was in the news that United Nations Security Council is to vote on the Bahraini resolution to protect commercial shipping in and around the Strait of Hormuz tomorrow. That's Globe File, as produced by Folaumi Olaniyo. Join us at 2 o'clock on the briefing on Adami Mogo, 93.1 FM Lagos. I am Ayo Adekeye. Good afternoon.